Good morning, Paul Hadley Middle School. It is Wednesday, April 8th, 2020, and this is your daily video announcement. I just want to give you a rundown of exactly what you need to be doing so that you have everything done for e-learning for my class, and then you can move on to another class which you have a ton of homework to do for as well. So today, the first thing that you need to do is go through the attendance quiz. Make sure you get that done so that I can mark you present and not absent. The second thing that you need to do is you're going to read a poem, sort of. It's a poem, but it's put to music, which is typically called a song. You're going to read Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana, and then we're going to do an analysis of those lyrics as a poetic exercise. After you get done doing that assignment that goes along with Smells Like Teen Spirit, then you can move on to another assignment. Or if you'd really like to hear that song, that poem put to music, you can go to YouTube and find Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana and have a rockin' good time. So here's what I want to teach you about today, because I think that there are some really important things that you need to know before you read that poem slash song Smells Like Teen Spirit. A couple things. Number one, what the heck is teen spirit? Well, teen spirit back in the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s, was a deodorant. The guy who wrote Smells Like Teen Spirit, his name is Kurt Cobain. He was the lead singer of Nirvana at the time. Well, he was the only lead singer of Nirvana, but his girlfriend at that time wore a deodorant called Teen Spirit, and he took that as a kind of a funny thing to use in a song. Okay, now let's talk about what kind of music that poem slash song fits into, what genre. Well, it fits into a genre of rock and roll, hard rock. It is a fusion of like punk rock and heavy metal, and we call it grunge. And there were a lot of really good bands that came out of this grunge phase in the 90s. Pearl Jam is another one. You may have heard of Soundgarden or Stone Temple Pilots, Nirvana, obviously. Alice in Chains is another one. But all of these bands kind of put together music that was stylistically like punk rock as well as heavy metal. He used a lot of distortion, a lot of electric guitar, a lot of mumbling lyrics that are kind of hard to understand, but that identified what grunge music was at the time. As an aside, this was a really big part of my teenage years. I was in high school for the last half of the 90s. I graduated high school in 1999. And so my middle school and high school years were all this kind of music. Smashing Pumpkins kind of fit into there, which was a huge in my mind. Metallica did not, but I was a big fan of Metallica then anyway. But I loved Nirvana and I loved Pearl Jam too, both of which fit perfectly into this style of music. Now, what is grunge music? Well, it fuses punk rock and heavy metal. It has a lot of themes that are really consistent. I'm going to just list off a bunch of ideas that grunge music gave to the audience. It talked about angst, like teenage angst a little bit, and that's why it spoke really highly, or like really intimately to me. But it talked about introspection, which means looking inside. It talked about themes of social alienation. I don't know if you can relate to that at all. I'm sure you can. Self-doubt, abuse, neglect, betrayal, social and emotional isolation, psychological trauma, and a desire for freedom. And that last bit, that desire for freedom, is a huge component to why teenagers in the 90s really gravitated toward this style of music, that desire for freedom, because you know, you're a preteen. If you're watching this, you know that desire for freedom is a huge part of what defines you right now in this stage of your life. Generation X is the generation that is most closely associated to this. However, I am not necessarily Generation X. I'm kind of in between Millennial and Generation X, and I don't know where I fit, but I was born in 1981, if you want to look that up. But it spoke to that era of generation of kids in the 90s. Nirvana was formed in 1987 by Kurt Cobain and a few other people, one of whom is Dave Grohl. I think he's significant. You should know who that is. He's the lead singer of Foo Fighters. Another good band that you should take a listen to, and also kind of does some grunge type of things in their music still, but it's rock. Nirvana had one of the most successful albums in rock, and it's called Unplugged, and it won a Grammy in 1996. They are currently members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Nirvana is like a really, really important band that you need to be aware of, but they also did some really interesting things with their lyrics, which is what I want you to look at as you go into Smells Like Teen Spirit and the assignment that's associated with that today. All right. If you have questions, message me through Canvas and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, make sure you do your attendance quiz, answer the questions, submit everything, and then move on to another class. And I will see you tomorrow.